Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the first lecture. Again, welcome and thank you for coming for tonight's lecture. Tonight's lecture will be about the implementation of Islamic law in a multiracial nation, which is obviously Malaysia, by a Malaysian's perspective, which the speakers are first Mr. Jason K. and Professor Syam Rahayu Abdul Aziz, which the moderator will be Mr. Muhammad Noor bin Abdul Rahim. While the second lecture talk will be held on 6th of November next week, regarding the Islamic State, on the issue of whether the Islamic State is our friend or our foe. Everyone is invited, and the speaker will be Mr. Faisal Hamidi, who is a humanitarian journalist. Ladies and gentlemen, why the topic is about implementation of Islamic law for tonight? Obviously, it's a very hot issue. In Malaysia, since few years ago, it is getting hotter with the proposal from certain political movements to apply or implement Islamic law in Malaysia in few states, which lead to different views, perspectives by among the Malaysians, by us. And there are many views, many kind of perspective regarding this Islamic law. There are people who support, there are people who are against this implementation of Islamic law. And that's why Usra Institution brought this topic for tonight by bringing two special speakers for tonight's talk, and we hope that it will be very beneficial to all of us. Before I pass the floor to Mr. Moderator, let us know a little bit about the two speakers for tonight. First of all, Mr. Jason K on the right side. He is currently the member of MELAKA Bar Committee. He has practiced exclusively as a litigator. He was head of the MELAKA Legal Aid Center in 2010 and 2011, and is currently a member of the Bar Council National Legal Aid Committee, as well as court license officer in the MELAKA Bar Committee. He is also the head of the Defense Division of the legal team at the Kuala Lumpur War Crimes Tribunal. Secondly, on the far right is Professor Syam Rahayu Abdul Aziz, who is the Associate Professor at the Kuliah of Laws Ahmad Ibrahim at the International Islamic University of Malaysia IIUM in Gombak. Beginning July 2014, she was seconded to the Institute of Islamic Understanding Malaysia, or IKIM, as Principal Fellow for Center for the Study of Sharia, Law and Politics. She has taught in the field of constitutional law, Islamic criminal procedure, and human rights for about 23 years. She has published more than 40 academic articles and has presented over 100 papers throughout his career. Her career. Her latest book is Kontrak Sosial, Perlembagaan Persekutuan 1957, Pengikat Jati Diri Bangsa Merdeka, which is published by Institut Terjemahan Negara in 2014. She is currently a member of the Council of the Malaysian Crime Prevention Foundation for the term 2013 until 2016, and also the panel thinker for Mufti Office in Kuala Lumpur, and fellow of the Malaysian Islamic University's Center for Women Science Studies. And lastly, our Mr. Moderator, Mr. Muhammad Noor bin Abdul Rahim, who is the lecturer for Faculty of Law in MMU since 2013. He graduated from International Islamic University of Malaysia. There you go, two speakers who has a lot of experience and who are very, very knowledgeable in this Islamic law. Without further ado, I pass the floor to Mr. Moderator, Mr. Muhammad Noor. Thank you.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Very good evening to all. Thank you, Mr. Brother Master Saramani. Okay, my current student also, Irfan. Okay, thank you for introducing me, because I was actually thinking about introducing myself. Alright, but since you have done that, then there's no need for me to do so. Unless if you want to know me, come to my room for consultation. Alright, so before we start, let me on behalf of our speakers also would like to extend our appreciation for the Institusi Usrah for inviting us tonight to discuss and to deliver views and thought with regard to a very, very interesting, I think, indeed it is interesting, and a very current, topic with regard to implementation of Islamic law in a multiracial nation, Malaysian perspective. Okay, so if you see, if you read the media, whether it's a printed or mass media, you can see that every day there will be issues. Okay, there will be issues, many issues in our nation, in our country, Malaysia. It includes racist issue, religious issue, and part of this issue that being heated, okay, and being debated for so long is, among others, is with regard to the implementation of Islamic law, and in particularly the recent one is with regard to the implementation of Islamic criminal law. Okay, so the move that we made by Institusi Usrah, okay, for giving us this floor to discuss on this matter, okay, on this issue, I think this will be a very, very good platform, okay, for us to open our mind, to get some overview, okay, to exchange ideas and opinions, all right, in order for us to enlighten our knowledge, okay, and also views with regard to the issue. So it is my hope as a moderator for tonight, okay, for our program, our talk tonight will be a very harmonious discussion, okay, no provocation please, all right, no sensitive issues, although the issue itself is sensitive, but hopefully, I don't want to hear after this there will be a police report lodged on any seditious act. Alright? Hopefully, no. We have been troubling with all this seditious thing for the past month. Okay, so please. Alright? This, yes, it is a very sensitive issue, but please take this as a platform for us to exchange ideas, opinions. Okay, and this is the virtue of the university. This is a place where we exchange views, exchange opinion, okay? Try to accept differences. Okay? So, our speakers here, two speakers, prominent speakers have been invited. Okay, on the right is my former teacher in IIU. Alright? A solid product of IIU. Okay? Associate Professor Dr. Shah Abdul Aziz. And in my left is Mr. Jason K, who is representing the MELAKA bar. Alright? They will be delivering, okay, their views, their opinion with regard to the issue in hand. Alright? So I think that this will be a very academic and intellectual discourse. Alright? So at the end, hopefully we could gain something, okay, we could gain benefit from these two speakers. Alright? So to start with, let me give some background or some overview how we will conduct our forum tonight. Okay, so we will have basically 4 rounds or 3 rounds. Okay, first round is that the speakers will have their floor. Okay, they will be delivering their views and their opinion with regard to the subject matter. 15 minutes to 20 minutes per person. Okay, so no question and answer yet. Okay, don't raise your hand. Please hear them first. Alright? And then after that, we will go to the second round where I will take the floor. I will pose questions to both of our speakers here, and they will be given around 15 minutes also to answer the question that has been given to them. Alright? At the end of the second round, then I will open the floor to all the audience, okay, to pose question, and we will have a question and answer session, alright, for 30 to 40 minutes, okay, and As a conclusion, then both speakers will then conclude their presentation, their point, and that will be the end of our forum tonight. Okay, so without further ado, okay, since it is very, I think we will have a very long discussion tonight. All right, so let us start with Dr. or Associate Professor Dr. Syah Rahayu. Okay, with regard to her view and opinion on the topic of implementation of Islamic law in a multiracial nation, academic perspective. Let us give a round of applause to Syah.
Congratulations to all participants today. I'm very grateful to be invited here. This is my first time in Multimedia University. I can see the crowd here. I'm just wondering whether if we have same program at my university, I will have the same number of crowd today. So I congratulate Brother Farid because he had been communicating with me for the past 2 months, I think, for this program. Mr. Jason, my respect panel speaker. To begin with, to discuss on, when we talk about law, majority of us are law students? No. Yes, majority are law students. No. But never mind. It's okay, I feel free. I was a singer before. Right. When we talk about law, what comes to our mind is that law is something, what should come to our mind is law is to regulate us. Because when we talk about, I was reading a book on the idea of law, we have many discussions. What is the purpose of having a law? Law is to regulate us. Law also will give us freedom. But that freedoms will be a regulatory. There will be regulations of how we conduct our freedom or how we carry out or how exercise our freedom or liberties. So law is to regulate our life. Let's say it's a very simple line. That the law is that when we go to class, we have to sit down. That is the legal, that is the law, that is the regulation. So when we talk about the law is about how to regulate our life, how to regulate our conduct, how to regulate our dealings with other people. And when we talk about Islamic law, one thing comes to the mind is that Islamic law is part of the faith of Muslims. Islamic law is not only the law that regulating the Muslims' life, or people's life, but because Islamic law is universal. Islamic law is not only for Muslims. Islamic law is for other people also to conduct their way of life. When it comes to the law, I'm using the word law in a very loose meaning. Not about law that is statutory law passed by the parliament. Law means just regulating our conduct of life. So Islamic law has two meanings. What we say, because Islam itself is a way of life. Islam itself is a way of life. It can either be written rules and unwritten rules. Right? Islamic law has some. For Muslims, Islamic law is part of their faith. Because most of Islamic law comes in the fundamental sources of Islam. That are Quran and Sunnah. So what we have in the Islamic law is not something created by human being. law, Islamic law, something created by God through revelation through the prophets. And the prophets, it can be in the form of the verses of the Quran, or it can be in the form of the acts or speeches or conduct of the prophet. So it becomes law. So let's say, how a Muslim eat. Macam mana orang Islam makan. There is also law in the loose meaning of the word law. So how a Muslim goes to the bathroom. Islam also describes how to go to the bathroom. And they have the prayers for all many conduct of Muslim life. They have prayers. These are also law in Muslim. But what we are talking about, the implementation of Islamic law here is about the law which can be, if we learn the law, there can be private law, there can be personal law, there can be public law. So which law are we talking about here? But basically the understanding of the Malaysian for the time being, at the moment, I believe is that we are not questioning about the personal law. The debate arise here is about implementation, not about implementation of personal law, but mostly implementation of public law. Implementation of public law, that law that affects the public. It's not a law about affecting my own self. Let's say I'm a Muslim, then I have something to do with myself about marriage or something, anything to your personal life. But law that being questioned now in Malaysia is about implementation is Islamic public law. Let's say about punishment for theft or anything that affect the public. Theft, for instance, then probably you are familiar with discussions in the media about hudud offences. This is actually the main issue. This is actually the main issue. To my mind, when I see the topic, it's about implementation of Islamic public law. Although there could be an issue on the implementation of Islamic personal law when it involves conversion to Islam by a Muslim, a convert father or spouse in marriage. So that is a good issue. So in a multiracial country like Malaysia, because Malaysia has a fundamental law, which is the Constitution. So the implementation of the law also in this country must be in accordance with the provisions of the Constitution. So we have to see what is there in the Constitution. For the implementation of Islamic law, whether it's private or whether it's personal, whether it's a public law, it has to go back to the provisions of the Constitution. So what does the Constitution say? The Constitution says that Islam is a state matter. No matter whether we are in multiracial or multi-religious community, that the Islamic law is a state matter, then that Islamic law and the state matter will be personal matters, family matters and personal matters. And this is very personal matters and family matters is very clearly stated in the Constitution. So this item 1, secondly, 9th schedule, clearly stated in the Constitution that Islamic law is a state matter under Article 3, that Islamic law involves personal law and family law under item number 1, secondly, 9th schedule of the Federal Constitution. So what is meant by family law? What is meant by personal law? Personal law is something to do with the personal matters of the members of the Muslims, or Muslim members. So something like what is mentioned in the Constitution about law regarding wakaf. Are you familiar with wakaf? Wakaf means you give some charity for permanent or temporary. The law of wakaf, then law of inheritance, and family law, like what I say about engagement, divorce, marriage. So this is Islamic law. So the law, Islamic family and personal law. So the implementation of Islamic family and personal law, although we are living in a multiracial community, multi-religious community, everybody is given the right to practice their personal law and family law. Right? So that is about Islam, but as about Islamic law. But the implementation of Islamic public law have two bases or have two foundations. The implementation of non-hudud public matters and another is hudud public matters. Are you familiar with the word hudud? Rasa faham tak? The word hudud. Nanti kita jawab dalam sesi yang ketiga ke nak jawab sekarang? So, which are considered hudud, briefly speaking, that the offences and punishment which are found clearly in the Quran and the Sunnah. But the non-hudud are the offences which are not found clearly. That's what we call discretionary punishment. So as far as the discretionary punishment, we already have that in our Malaysian community, and it's accepted by all. It is accepted by all. Let's say punishment for theft, that you go to imprisonment, right? Or you go to fine for certain offences, or you go to imprisonment, or even you go to death penalty for robbery. This is also part of hudud offences, robbery. So we already have that in our penal code. So we have the law, public law, which the similar values of Islamic values are already there in the law. The similar values that say Islam also punishes theft. And we have that in the penal code. Nobody will say that theft is a good act, right? Because the objective of the law is to see justice is done. Justice is seen to be done. For whatever legal system we apply, the ultimate aim is to get justice. The ultimate aim is to get justice. But for Muslim acts one more, for faith. Because of faith. But as long as justice is achieved, that will be fine on that score. So everybody will say that it's justice. But for Muslims, there's another element that is faith. That is why for some Muslims, hudud is a very sensitive issue. Because it goes to faith of a Muslim. We cannot deny that. Because as a Muslim, if we deny hudud as one part of the Islamic teaching, then there's a questionable faith in Islam, belief in Islam. So that is a serious issue for Muslims. So coming back here, the implementation of Islamic law partially are already there in our multiracial community. But there are norms, there are beliefs, there are values in Islamic law which are yet in implementation. The punishment also is not in implementation. But I mentioned about discretionary punishment. Most of punishments under Drugs Dangerous Act, Traffic Act, so you already have a lot of discretionary punishment which we share the values. Whatever races in our country, they will share the value because, let's say, somebody defamation, defame, fitnah orang, that is an offense. In Islam also is an offense. Bahkan in Islam, if you defame somebody, if you fitnah somebody, it's amount to killing the person also. So it's a very serious offense, and we share the values. We share the values in defamation is not allowed. So there's nothing un-Islamic about defamation law. Everybody accepts that because we want to achieve justice. What we want to achieve is justice. So public law in Islam also have been accepted by the multiracial community. But what is the debate now is a punishment for hudud only. Only the punishment for hudud. But I think we have to go further later to understand what hudud is. But as a baseline, I would say that the implementation of discretionary offences in the Islamic law, we already have that and they've been accepted. So I'm happy to answer questions and to receive comments after this. I will not speak longer, I just give the foundation. So I will say my conclusion would be that any law practice the ultimate aim to do to justice. But for Muslims, the another ultimate aim is to make sure that the faith of Muslims is being accepted in reality also. So this is the most important points that I want to say here. And then the second one is about the implementation of many Islamic public law is already here in this country. It's already here, acceptable by the multiracial community of Malaysia. So I think I put my case to rest. I will surely happy to receive comments and answers questions later. Thank you and Assalamualaikum.
Prof. for opening the floor for us, giving us a very comprehensive and a good opening for tonight's discussion. Okay, you can see how a candidate will discuss things. Okay, define. Okay, what is law? What is Islamic law? Okay, so that is how we should have in our mind. Okay, know what are we talking about first. Okay, we are talking about law. We are talking about Islamic law. But what is it? Now you know that. Is it public? Is it private? Okay, it's not me who will be the speaker. So without further ado, I'll give the floor next to Mr. Jason, okay, to further enlighten us with regard to the topic for tonight.
Good evening. Good evening all, and I'll stand. I'm so glad we have electricity here tonight. Electricity is a wonderful thing. With lights, with aircon, amplification, I don't have to shout. No one got the joke. This is what Usra really is about, and I will admit I didn't know the word Usra until about a week ago. What are we looking for here today? A quiet discussion, and we share knowledge, we encourage contemplation, and hopefully leads to understanding, all of us. I have 15 minutes, so let's start slowly. I'm sorry I have to do this, but may I please have a show of hands of who here are non-Muslims and are not law students? May I just have a show of hands? If you're non-Muslim and you are not a law student, all right, not so many. So most of you are Muslims or law students, and all law students, right? Okay. Firstly, I believe if you do not know the term ta'zir, you may want to ask that question to Professor afterwards in session 3. Because that's basically what she was talking about in the last portion of her presentation. Now first, what is Islamic law? In the narrow sense. What is the narrow sense of Islamic law? It is law that is based on the Quran or Sunnah. It is usually contrasted with civil law or the common law. In our case, Malaysia, specifically English common law, on which our laws are based. Our penal laws are from the Indian Penal Code. Now, Islamic law, like all other forms of law, seek to bring justice in the affairs of the world. Justice is the common thread that runs through any system of laws. Now, without justice as a goal, it becomes a power play, where the strong imposes its will on the weak. Islam came at a time when tribalism was rife and women had a very low status in society. Islam changed all of that. But that was with the Arab society. It was a monoculture. Now, can that positive transformation, which worked in a monoculture, work in a multicultural society? like Malaysia, what are our experiences? Malaysia is a federation with a written constitution, and that written constitution is the supreme law of the federation, Article 4. Laws are made both at the federal level and at the state level, negeri-negeri. And the areas where the laws can be made at each level, federal or state, are specified in the Constitution. Schedule 9, List 1 and List 2. List 1, federal, List 2, state. Oh. And that is Article 74. If there is an inconsistency, federal law prevails, and the part of the state law that is inconsistent is void. Article 75, Constitution. These are basic things. So in what areas of Malaysian life does Islamic law play a part? In a limited capacity. The Sharia courts only have jurisdictions over persons professing the religion of Islam, and only with regard to Islamic law, personal and family law. And for offences, only with regard to offences against the precepts of the religion. Schedule 9, List 2, Paragraph 1. Now, in this limited capacity, Islamic law and the Sharia courts exist in Malaysia. And this has been affirmed in 2 cases at the highest courts of the land. First, in the case of Cik Omar, Cik So, decision of the Supreme Court, the then Supreme Court in 1989, where it was held, I'm quoting here, the law in this country is still what it is today, secular law, where morality not accepted by the law is not enjoying the status of law, unquote. Second case, more recent one, Latifah Mat Zain, decision of the federal court in 2007, held unanimously. The position of the Sharia courts is similar to the session courts and the magistrates' courts, which the Constitution called inferior courts, unquote. Now this may jar you, but it is a valid reading of the law. And do note, the 2 judges who wrote the decisions in Cik Omar, the case of Cik Omar, in the case of Latifah, were Muslims. To date, neither case has been overruled. Unlike the 2000 case of Bunsum Bunyanit, where it was a federal court decision which was eventually overturned by the 2010 federal court decision in Tan Hin Yong, deferred indivisibility. If you're a law student, you know what I'm talking about. Now, further, if we look at the words of the Constitution, the part about the judiciary, that starts from Article 121 onwards. There is a formula that is used when it mentions the different courts that are created. Article 121, Clause 1 starts with, there shall be 2 high courts of coordinate jurisdiction and status, namely the High Court of Malaya, the High Court of Sabah and Sarawak. This is the formula used to create the High Court of Malaya and the High Court of Sabah and Sarawak. And after that, there's a side note, a little bit down in Article 121 about inferior courts, and such inferior courts as may be provided by federal law. Now this formula is repeated in Article 121, Clause 1, capital B, for the Court of Appeal. There shall be a court which shall be known as the Mahkamah Raya, Court of Appeal, blah, blah, blah. And for the federal court, it's at Article 121, Clause 2. There shall be a court which shall be known as the Mahkamah Persekutuan, federal court, blah, blah, blah. No similar words are used for the creation of Sharia courts in the federal constitution. Now, the case of Latifah Mat Zain explains why this is probably so, at paragraph 78 to 80. And I urge you to read both cases, Latifah Mat Zain and Cik Omar Cik So, as well as the wonderful article by Professor Ahmad Ibrahim in the NLJ in 1989, where he gives the reasons for the insertion of clause 1 capital A into Article 121. And if you have a little bit more time, I would suggest you read Professor Salih Wang's article on clause 1 of Article 121. Now I will stop here and move to my second point because I think I'm seeing glazed eyes already at this point. Let's talk about hudud. Proponents of Islamic law, specifically hudud, will point out that Malaysia has embraced Islamic banking. Therefore, it is an indication that the Islamic legal concept of hudud and its punishments would probably also be acceptable in multicultural Malaysia. This is an interesting proposition. Kalau boleh terima Islamic banking, kenapa tak boleh terima hudud? Logical kan? Okay. However, two key elements are always missing when this point is raised. It is true, Islamic banking has been accepted by Muslims and non-Muslims alike. Even PricewaterhouseCoopers, Malaysia, in its August 2008 report has stated, page 12, that Malaysia, Asia's Islamic finance hub, more than 50% of Islamic bank customers are non-Muslims. PricewaterhouseCoopers says this. Now, what are the two differences that I talked about? First, Islamic banking in Malaysia exists side by side with conventional banking. The customer has a choice. He or she can choose either Islamic or conventional banking. This is the first point. Second point, this choice of Islamic or conventional banking is not dependent on the religion of the customer. As a contrast, for hudud offences, there is no choice of whether to opt in or opt out for Muslims. Muslims are automatically included, while non-Muslims are automatically excluded. This is the very clear words of the Constitution at Schedule 9 and in all the state Sharia enactments. Let's move one more step further. These 2 points must be read in light of Article 8, Clause 1 of the Constitution. I'm reading it to you now. All persons are equal before the law and entitled to the equal protection of the law. Article 8, Clause 2. Except as expressly authorized by this Constitution, there shall be no discrimination against citizens on the grounds only of religion, race, descent, place of birth, or gender in any law. Or, if you like, to put it in the words of Malaysia's law, justice is very important in Islam. There are 43 verses, which enjoin upon Muslims to judge with justice. In multi-religious Malaysia, because applying the hudud laws to Muslims and not to non-Muslims would cause injustice to Muslims. In the interest of upholding Islamic justice for all, we have not implemented hudud laws. Islam is not so rigid that injustice should be ignored in carrying out what is enjoined by the Sharia. To cut off the hands of Muslims for stealing, while non-Muslim thieves would only get 2 months jail. Actually, it's a bit more than that. You commit robbery, as Professor has mentioned, and you kill someone while committing robbery, Section 296 of the Penal Code says you can get the death sentence. That's a bit more than that. To cut off the hands of Muslims for stealing while non-Muslim thieves would only get 2 months jail cannot be regarded as just. The sentence must be the same for both. If we cut off the hands of non-Muslims in order to be just, we will bring about, remember these words, chaos and havoc in the country. Allah does not like people who cause chaos and havoc in society. In not applying hudud laws in Malaysia, we are truly adhering to the teachings of Islam. So, why don't we just simply change the constitution? Right? Obvious question. And apply. Why don't we just simply change the constitution and apply to make Islamic law the basis of all laws? Like the position taken, for example, in the constitutions of Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, and Iran. And if you want the exact citations, it is Article 227, Clause 1 in the Pakistan Constitution. It is Article 1 in the Saudi Arabian Basic Law of Governance. And for Iran, it is Article 4 and Article 167. Okay? Now, in those constitutions, they have specific reference to the Quran and Sunnah as the yardstick of their laws. Malaysian constitution does not have that. Why can't we do that? Why can't we just change our constitution? Practical reasons. For one, these three countries, we're just using them as an example, Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, Iran, they have an overwhelming Muslim population, unlike Malaysia, which is a bit more diverse. And in this diversity, the lack of knowledge in Islam, the lack of knowledge in the principles of Sharia, and the whole framework of Islamic laws make it difficult to just implement it. There will be opposition in a multicultural society. There will be a lot of opposition. Now, what is heartening to know that this opposition has its roots in the lack of knowledge and understanding. So, things like we're doing tonight, what we're doing tonight, a discussion is good. Now, this is a poll by the MELAKA Center, conducted this year in April. Now, the results were as follows. And this is the key part. But let me read out to you. It had 4 main questions, so I'm going to read out to you. And listen very carefully to the numbers, please. 43% do not really understand hudud. Now, this is general population. But among the Malays, who are by definition also Muslim, the figure is 32%. So, please don't focus on that. I'm not there. So, out of the general Malaysian population, 43% says they don't understand hudud. Out of the Malay that were polled, the figure is 32% who say they don't really understand hudud. Second point, who do they support hudud? 38% of the Malaysian population said no. Among the Malays, the figure is lower. 20% said no, I don't support hudud. This is the interesting part. Are we ready for hudud? That was the question. 59% of overall Malaysians said no. The figure among the Malays respondents was 1% less. 58% said no, we're not ready for hudud. And the final question, do you think hudud will be implemented fairly? Out of the general population, it's 51% who think yes. No, it won't be implemented fairly. Among the Malay population, respondents, it was 43%. Now, why do I single out the responses from the Malay community? Because by definition, in Article 160 of the Constitution, a Malay is a person who professes the religion of Islam. There are religious classes for all Muslim children from when they start school, sometimes from before they start school. Okay? To learn about Islam. And if 58% of Malay Muslims in 2014, do you not think that Malaysia is ready to implement hudud law? What does it say? And by the way, this figure of do you think Malaysia is ready to implement hudud law? It is 58% for Malays, 59% for Chinese, and 61% for Indians not ready to implement hudud law. Go to the next one. This one. Across all lines, red says not ready, blue says ready. This is the interesting part. Across all lines, be it gender, the first part is ethnicity. Overall, 59% said no, 58% of Malays said no, 59% of Chinese said no, not ready, 61% of Indians said no. But across all lines, gender, age, occupation, household income, whether you're rich or you're poor, whether you have internet access or not, whether you're getting it from normal media or the new media, social media, across the lines, the response is the same. We're not ready to implement it. In 2014, in April. What should? Can we go to the next slide? The next one. Now, what should be of extreme interest is the question whether or not, the last question, whether or not the respondents think that hudud can be implemented fairly. Among the Malays, it was almost equal. 44% said yes, can be implemented fairly. 43% said no, can't be implemented fairly. Here's the scary part. Among the Chinese, it was 11% said yes, it can be implemented fairly. 16% says no, it can be implemented fairly. Among the Indians, it was 17% said yes, it can be implemented fairly. 64% said no. Now this brings the reality of Islamic law in Malaysia. We're still trying to find the right balance here. Experience has shown that given a choice and implemented within the structure of the civil court system, Islamic banking has been welcomed with open arms. So, how do I end this positively? So what other area of Islamic law, specifically in hudud, what about the other areas? Should there be a choice? Should there be a process of easing in Islamic law? I am reminded of the prohibition against alcohol in the Quran. If my reading is correct, it did not happen all at once. It was a gradual process, revealed over 3 verses. First in second surah, I think, Baqarah, verse 219. They ask you about intoxicants and games of chance. Say in both of them, there is a great sin and means of profit in man, and their sin is greater than their profit. Sin greater than profit. And they ask you as to what they should spend. Say, what you can spend. Does Allah make clear to you the communication that you may ponder? And then the second verse on alcohol, Surah 4, verse 43. And then the final, the 5th Surah, verse 19. The formula is already there in the Quran itself. And remember, the prohibition against alcohol was directed to a monoculture, the Arab culture, and it took years. Now, it would be fitting to follow that example if there is a desire to implement more Islamic laws in multicultural Malaysia. And this is the first step. Dialogue and understanding by all parties of why there is support and why there is opposition. And confronting the hard issues honestly. with a view to ensure that the ultimate goal is justice.